Welcome to the video review of Dark of the Moon Leader Class Sentinel Prime. First of all, I want to say there will be no Dark of the Moon spoilers in this video, so don't worry. Also, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Michael Bay finally got it right. So right, in fact, I hold it up to Star Wars in awesomeness. Old Star Wars, though. Even Revenge of the Fallen stands up to new Star Wars quality. Anyway, Sentinel Prime's alt mode here is a Rosenbauer Panther fire truck, and it looks fairly dead on. It only has a few issues, and while some people can't get past his pinkish hue, it doesn't bother me at all. I suppose they made this toy a little bit more pink to differentiate from Optimus, but I really don't know why. It would have been nice if he had been as red from the movie, but oh well. My first complaint about this toy is the fact that he doesn't have his movie counterpart's knobby tires. He ends up instead with these quarter-thin lies. And as my first leader class toy that doesn't have rubber tires, I must say I'm very disappointed. Because of the fact that the wheels are plastic and they're slightly knobby, they don't roll very well on smooth surfaces. At least this will lessen the blow if and when I ever manage to get Revenge of the Fallen Optimus Prime. The wheels and the forward underkibble are what hinder this toy's ability to convey a convincing alt mode. And while it doesn't bother me too much on Sentinel, it's the very reason I unscrewed and removed the arms of my Ironhide altogether. The clear windows look really good, although I think the actual truck has dark tinted windows, so that might have looked better. And it would have done a better job hiding his robot head in there. There's this gap in the underside that really messes with the heftiness of this toy, making it feel weaker than it needs to. Partly because almost the entire robot ends up here in the front. With this gap, you think they could have made this kibble disappear a little better. You know, better than not at all. And from the back, this gap is a little more prevalent and really diminishes the mystique of this toy. I'm a firm believer that the Transformers alt mode should come first, because presumably that's a thing that actually exists, so it better look like what it's supposed to be. While I don't have the other two, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the best looking leader class alt mode from Dark of the Moon. Mainly because of Ironhide's inexcusable underkibble, again, while still not having an open bed. And because of Bumblebee's shoddy paint job and his stupid mech tech backpack. Other than the kibble issue, this is just a nice little rectangular prism of an alt mode. I actually feel really bad for the guy who had to engineer this thing to transform because it is just a big rectangle. But it's nice and square and a believable kick-ass fire truck with a spiffy sound gimmick. And it plays for as long as you hold it, so that's a nice touch. The crane-mounted water hose is fun and superposable, but over time I think I'm going to have to tighten these joints. He has a front-mounted proboscis hose as well that flips out, which I found is actually on these trucks. But the way they included it on this toy is slightly creepy, like some half-deformed fly mouth. But it folds back in nicely, and you can just pretend like it's not there. 3:16. I thought this might have been a reference to the Bible verse, but in hindsight of actually looking up John 3:16 and seeing the movie, I'm fairly positive they're unrelated. There's a nice brazen Autobot symbol back here that looks really cool. The robot mode sword fits under this panel very nicely, but if you forget to put it in there while you're transforming into truck mode, you can have a nightmare getting it back together. His robot shield is supposed to fit here on the bottom, and as if this robot kibble doesn't drag close enough to the ground, if you actually manage to get the shield on there, it makes it even worse. This thing actually touches the ground while it's driving. It's really better just to leave it off. And while we're on this shield, he comes with this half-assed attack mode, which apparently does that. It's supposed to push a button inside one of the ports and make that sound. Also, by pushing this button on the shield, it gives you an attack sound. And when you take the shield off, reverse transforming. You're also supposed to unfold and attach the sword across the top here, but it's really weak. I'm not exactly sure what this attack mode is supposed to do while you're on the move, but there it is. The attack mode also features these panels that open up, and these little guns spring out, but it's really hard to do, and it completely destroys the back of the truck. Here's a size comparison with 2007 Leader Optimus Prime, and Optimus is quite a bit bigger. I think it's roughly in scale, but I think it might be a little better with the Revenge of the Fallen Optimus, which, again, I'm trying to get. Also, here he is next to Voyager Ironhide, and they're almost the same size as far as height is concerned. If I have to give this toy props for anything, it's the fact that its robot mode, which is relatively huge, condenses down into a very tiny alt mode. Very reminiscent of how they do it in the movie. I will say, as far as leader class figures go, Dark of the Moon has the least interest for me, but I still absolutely love this toy. Now the robot mode is where this thing really shines. Which, contrary to my alt mode comes first belief, this is the mode that really works. This thing had to be an engineering nightmare, considering the truck's shape and inevitable panels. Though I think they could have made them less panelly if they tried. I've seen it work in the past. My biggest aesthetic complaint would have to be these back flaps. In the movie, much like the G1 show, he did have a couple of wing-like capes, but not 6 of them. Also, his hose gets totally unused in this robot, and really doesn't help the cape issue either. Let's just be honest, this thing is a shell former. Accept it for what it is. I knew what it was going into it, and I'm okay with it. My girlfriend believes this toy is going to end up being a shelf warmer, which makes this thing a shelf warmer shelf warmer. On that note, he is a regular nightmare to transform back into his alt mode. I cry every time. It is literally the only transformer I have that I still consistently dread transforming back into vehicle mode. I assume that will only be outmatched if I ever get Mach Kick, as getting this thing's panels to line up is similarly impossible. I was really hesitant to do the transforming for the opening of this video because I knew I'd have to transform it back to review him. That said, I love some of the transforming parts of this toy. I already mentioned how some of the panels disappear, like huge panels from the side of the truck getting folded up into the legs here, and the back of the truck getting folded up to make the back of the feet. But even cooler than that is how this thing's torso comes together. One of the biggest issues with car transformers is what do you do with the front windscreen? His goes inside of the chest. It's the first piece in there. And then you got the bumper, the first chest piece, the second chest piece, the wheels, the windows. I'll be honest, the way this thing's chest forms is one of the biggest selling points on this toy for me. And the way his side windows fold up to top off the chest is just inspiring. He does end up being rather top heavy, but not so bad as some others. And he can be brought to make some cool poses. His arms really piss me off. They're only connected by these weak little clips, and they always end up coming off when posing him. His legs are really cool. On top of the fact that they go to the sky, they're very reminiscent of Optimus Prime, much like some of the other elements of his design, which leads me to believe that there are inherent traits in being a Prime. He has sound clips specific to this mode, such as, "I am Sentinel Prime." Unfortunately, they didn't get Leonard Nimoy to voice him. "I am Sentinel Prime." Yes, you are. Since I don't have any mech tech weapons, my Optimus Primal gun has a 5mm peg on it. He also says, "Good to see you alive, Optimus. What has happened to the Allspark?" I really dislike his generic voice. It's nothing like Leonard Nimoy at all, though I believe he was a late addition to the Dark of the Moon cast, which might explain the incorrect voice chip. I mentioned earlier about how this robot mode condenses into such a tiny alt mode, but to give you a better example, here he is next to Leader Prime. His robot weapons are really awesome and are very reminiscent of the movie. My biggest complaints being that the sword folds in two. Namely so that you could store it in the back of the truck, but I feel if they'd wanted to with the length of the truck, they could have made this whole thing fit in there without having to fold in two. The shield's awesome, but because of its round handle, it doesn't stay stable in the hand very well, but fortunately there are 4 extra mech tech ports in this mode, one of them being on his forearm, which allows you to attach the shield there. Unlike Revenge of the Fallen Optimus Prime, his hands are actually posable, but unlike 2007 Prime, his fingers aren't individually posable. Although it does help when you're trying to get him to grip the shield better. All in all, he's not my favorite, but I definitely gotta give him a solid 8.5, maybe even a 9 out of 10. He's a really good figure, and even though he's a shell former and he's got a few problems, I think he's awesome. This has been the video review for Dark of the Moon Leader Class Sentinel Prime, and thank you for watching.